Hello there, welcome back. Tonight, let us quietly slip into the past together. Imagine a time before pharmacies and clinics, before the sharp glare of fluorescent lights or the hum of modern machines. In this world, healing was a practice woven seamlessly into daily life, quiet, attentive craft passed from hand to hand. Heart to heart, the kitchens, gardens, and hearths of medieval and early modern Europe were places of comfort and care. Remedies came not from laboratories but from herb beds, spice racks, and whispered folk knowledge. Healing was practical, spiritual, and rooted in close observation of the natural world. So, settle in. Perhaps wrap yourself in a soft blanket, sip something warm, and allow yourself to drift into the gentle rhythms of history. Tonight, begin our journey through everyday medical remedies in Old Europe. Chapter 1. Remedies for ailments of the mind and head. Let us start where discomfort often begins with the head. Headaches were part of life in Old Europe. They were seen as signs of imbalance, fatigue, or sometimes divine warning. Causes ranged from the mundane to the mystical. To long spent working in the fields under the oppressive summer sun could cause the temples to throb. Smoke from a peat, fire curling beneath the cottage rafters might lead to heavy eyelids and a dull ache behind the brow. Winter's dampness pressing against stone walls often made old aches flare, and poor posture during hours of embroidery or plowing could strain the neck and skull. For these pains, the people turned to nature's pharmacy. Rosemary was a favored remedy. Its needle-like leaves, green and fragrant, even in cold weather, were believed to invigorate the mind. Monks and nuns in quiet cloisters planted rosemary alongside lavender and sage, tending their herb beds with careful devotion. Villagers did the same in their humble plots, knowing rosemary as a plant of remembrance and clarity. A simple tisane steeping rosemary in warm water brought relief. The herbal steam would rise from the cup, gently loosening tension from behind the eyes. Sometimes, rosemary oil was prepared by soaking the plant in olive oil under the warmth of the sun. This oil was massaged onto the temples in small, circular motions. It's often accompanied by whispered prayers to St. John or St. Hildegard, patroness of healers. Lavender was another cherished plant for calming the mind. Its pale purple blossoms lined garden paths and windowsills. In homes across Europe, lavender flowers were sewn into linen sachets, placed beneath pillows to encourage restful sleep and soothe restless minds. For headaches, a cloth soaked in lavender water and vinegar was draped across the forehead. A cooling ritual as much about sensation as belief. When headaches deepened into the megrim, what we might now call migraines, more elaborate treatments were tried. Physicians followed the teachings of Galen, who believed health rested on the balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. A megrim might be diagnosed as a sign of excess heat or moisture in the brain. To counter this, healers offered herbal posies of mint, sage, and marjoram for the patient to sniff, hoping the fresh scents would rebalance the senses. If the pain persisted, bloodletting might be performed with a careful cut behind the ear or on the inside of the arm. While modern medicine has abandoned such practices, at the time, they were carried out with ritual precision, often by barbers or cunning folk who combined medical knowledge with local lore, for those who preferred gentler cures. Sweet basil oil was kept in small jars by the hearth. A drop of this oil behind the ears was believed to dispel melancholy and lift the spirit. Betony, a humble plant with spiked purple flowers, was chewed as a protection against nightmares and mental unrest. It was said, "He who is betony has no need of a doctor," so strong was the belief in its virtues. These remedies were often prepared with spoken charms, blending medicine with magic. As rosemary was plucked, one might murmur, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, may this herb bring ease." Healing was never just physical. It was an act of love, belief, and connection to the unseen world. Close your eyes for a moment now. Picture the gentle clink of ceramic pots, the warm scent of crushed herbs in a wooden mortar, and the soft hum of a healer tending to someone they love. Let's take a deep breath together and continue softly into the next chapter. Chapter 2. Stomach. Troubles and digestive remedies, the stomach, so central to life, was often the first to suffer. In medieval Europe, meals were simple but heavy. For common folk, daily fare consisted of bread, cheese, porridge, and ale. Bread was not always made from the finest grain. It might include rye, barley, or even ground peas and beans, making it dense and hard to digest. At times, bread was baked. With old or spoiled flour mildewed from storage in damp granaries, meat was rare for the poor. When it appeared on the table, it was often salted or smoked to preserve it. Salted pork and dried fish were staples. But such preservation made the flesh tough and taxing on the gut. Fresh fruits and vegetables came only in season. Winters were long, and stored foods might ferment or sour in their barrels. It is little wonder that stomach complaints were common, from bloating to cramps, from nausea to constipation. For these discomforts, the people turned first to peppermint. Its bright green leaves were chewed after meals, the oils cooling the mouth and soothing the belly. A tisane of mint was a common household cure, taken slowly by the hearth as the fire crackled. Monasteries kept meticulous herbals recording peppermint's uses, its refreshing qualities cherished for centuries. Seeds were another gentle friend of digestion. After eating, villagers would chew a pinch of fennel, savoring its licorice sweetness, while it settled the stomach. Fennel was thought to reduce gas and relieve the griping pains of indigestion. When someone had eaten spoiled food or suffered nausea, they were often given oxymel, blend of vinegar and honey, sometimes with the addition of warming herbs like thyme or ginger. The sharpness of vinegar cut the bile, as healers said, while honey soothed the throat and stomach lining. For constipation, remedies were gentle but effective. Stewed prunes or figs, sometimes soaked in wine, acted as a laxative. The sweet fruits were both medicine and treat, easing discomfort while providing a small moment of pleasure. When the opposite occurred, diarrhea, people turned to more astringent plants. Pomegranate rind, imported in small quantities from southern regions, was boiled into tea to tighten the bowels. Oak bark might also be used, rich in tannins that reduced inflammation and dried out excess moisture. Children, especially fragile to stomach ailments, were given gruel made from oats or barley. This soft, warm porridge was flavored with a touch of honey and chamomile, both to ease digestion and to comfort the spirit in wealthier homes. Spiced cordials were kept on hand-sweetened wines infused with herbs like ginger, anise, and cinnamon. These cordials served as both digestive and remedy, bringing warmth to the belly and delight to the senses. But for the average villager, healing was homegrown. The kitchen garden was the pharmacy. Thyme for gas, sage for appetite, marjoram for cramping. Each plant had its place, and every household had its own recipes and methods passed through generations. Imagine now the soft bubble of a pot over the fire. Herbs simmering gently, their scents filling the room. The hands stirring the pot are patient and familiar, offering not just medicine but comfort. Chapter 3. Herbal Gardens and the Role of the Wise Woman at the Heart of Daily Life in Old Europe. There was always a garden. These were not the grand gardens of kings or nobles, filled with sculpted hedges and ornamental fountains. These were small, humble spaces, patches of earth, tended by hands that knew each plant intimately. Whether nestled against the side of a thatched cottage, spread out beside a monastery, or contained in simple pots on a windowsill, the herbal garden was central to the health and well-being of the home. In these gardens grew not just food, but medicine, and the knowledge of plants was passed from generation to generation like a family heirloom. This was the domain of the wise woman, the healer, the herbwife, the cunning woman who knew the secrets of root and leaf, blossom and bark. Her garden was her pharmacy, her kitchen, and her chapel all at once. The garden as medicine chest life, in medieval and early modern Europe, was steeped in nature's cycles. People watched the turning of the seasons closely, knowing when to plant, when to harvest, and when to gather specific herbs for their greatest potency. Some herbs were plucked in the soft blush of dawn, their leaves still kissed by dew. Others were gathered under the full moon, in keeping with old beliefs that the moon's phases affected a plant's strength and spirit. Certain roots were dug only on saints' days, or after the recitation of specific prayers. As harvesting medicine was seen not just as a physical task, but as a spiritual practice, these gardens were carefully organized, though they might appear wild to modernize. Pads of stone or beaten earth wound between raised beds or simple rows. Plants were grouped by their uses, those for healing wounds, those for easing fevers, those for quieting the mind, those for soothing the stomach. Let's walk together now, quietly, through such a garden. A walk through the herbal garden there. Near the cottage door grows chamomile. Its bright white petals and golden centers resemble miniature suns, nodding softly in the breeze. Chamomile was gathered each summer, carefully dried on linen cloths near the hearth, and stored in cloth pouches. It was used to brew calming teas, to make bath infusions for sore muscles, and even to lighten fair hair when steeped and poured over the scalp. Nearby grows comfrey. With its broad, rough leaves and bell-shaped flowers in shades of purple and blue, known as bonnet, comfrey was used to treat bruises, sprains, and broken bones. The wise woman would mash its roots into a paste, sometimes mixed with goose fat or beeswax, and apply it as a poultice to injured limbs. Today, modern science confirms comfrey's role in promoting tissue repair, though with caution, for its power is strong. Further along, you'll find yarrow, its feathery leaves and clusters of tiny white flowers swaying in the wind. Yarrow was called woundwort. For good reason, it could stop bleeding quickly when pressed onto a cut. Soldiers in ancient times carried it into battle, and villagers of medieval Europe kept it close for the same reason. It was also used in teas to break fevers, helping the body sweat out illness. Beside the yarrow grows sage, revered not just for its flavor but for its medicinal properties. A tea of sage soothed sore throats and helped preserve health during the winter months. Sage was also seen as a plant of wisdom and protection. Its leaves burned as incense in some households to purify the air and guard against illness. In the shadier part of the garden, you'll find violets and mallow used for soothing inflamed skin and quieting coughs. Plantain, with its broad leaves, grew almost everywhere, often dismissed as a weed. But to the wise woman it was a trusted ally for insect bites, stings, and scratches. Clustered near the stone wall is thyme. It's tiny. Leaves packed with power? Thyme was believed to guard against disease, and during outbreaks of plague or pestilence, people carried posies of thyme and rosemary to protect themselves from bad air. Thyme tea eased coughs and sore chests, while thyme oil massaged into the skin helped relieve muscle pain. Growing tall and spindly is angelica, named for its connection to the archangels. Legend said it was revealed in a dream to a healer by an angel, who taught its use for warding off plague. Angelica was both medicine and magic, protecting against illness while strengthening the body with its bitter warming properties. The role of the wise woman in every village. There was someone who knew these plants well, a wise woman or a herb wife who served as the healer for her community. She was not necessarily a midwife or a physician. She understood the body's needs through close observation and years of practice. Her knowledge came from her mother and grandmother, from oral tradition, and from her own experience. Of her remedies were passed down through centuries, rooted in folk customs as old as the hills. Others came from more formal learning, perhaps. A tattered copy of an herbal book or a scroll borrowed from a monastery, she knew not just the herbs, but the seasons, the weather, the moon phases, and the signs of the body. She watched the color of the tongue, the brightness of the eyes, the feel of the skin. She listened to the stories people told her, understanding that healing was about more than just plants. It was about tending to the whole person. Her work was not always easy. Sometimes she was honored. Sometimes she was feared. In times of health, she was a helper and protector. In times of plague or crop failure, suspicion might fall upon her. Yet still, she carried her knowledge quietly, tending her garden, preparing her remedies, and serving her community with care. Preparing remedies, the wise woman's home was filled with the tools of her craft. Her kitchen doubled as her apothecary. Bundles of dried herbs hung from the rafters, lavender, mint marjoram. Mugwort. Jars of honey, oils, and beeswax sat on wooden shelves. Small pots of ointments were prepared and stored carefully. Labeled in simple marks or symbols, she might sit by the hearth in the evening, stirring a pot of herbal oil, perhaps olive oil, infused with calendula petals for treating rashes or plantain leaves for healing cuts. Beeswax was melted gently into the oil to create salves, soft and fragrant, ready to be spread onto the skin. She made syrups from horehound and honey, simmered slowly to soothe winter coughs. She ground fennel seeds and caraway into powders to ease digestive troubles. She brewed oxymel, a mixture of vinegar and honey, adding herbs like thyme or sage to make it both medicine and tonic. She dried rose petals for compresses, collected nettles for spring tonics to cleanse the blood, and steeped elder flowers for fevers. In times of injury, she prepared poultices of comfrey and marigold, pressing them gently onto bruises or swollen joints. Every preparation was an act of patience and precision, done with care, often accompanied by prayer or whispered blessings. Healing. As ritual for the wise woman, healing was not separate from belief. She worked with the plants, but also with the spirit. She knew that a soothing word or a gentle touch was as important as the remedy itself. She might recite a charm while applying a salve, invoking the saints or calling upon the elements of earth, air, fire. Healing was woven into the rhythm of the day. Gathering herbs at dawn, drying them in the warmth of the afternoon. Sun. Preparing medicines by the light of the hearth. These were not chores, but sacred acts. There was a time for everything. A time to gather, a time to prepare, a time to heal. The garden as sanctuary, the garden itself, was a place of peace. It was where the healer went to listen, not just to the plants, to her own breath, to the hum of bees, to the whispers of wind through leaves. Here, she could reflect, observe, and connect with the living world around her. People came to her not just for medicine, but for comfort, for guidance, and sometimes for stories. Sitting among the herbs, she might share tales of the plants, how foxglove could save a failing heart, though dangerous if used carelessly, how mugwort protected travelers, or how rosemary brought memory and clarity. The garden was a place of learning too. Children watched and helped, learning the difference between healing plants and those that could cause harm. They learned to respect the earth, to gather only what was needed, to thank the plants for their gifts. A living legacy. Much of what we know today about herbal medicine comes from this legacy. The knowledge of the wise woman was written down, in part by monks and scholars, but most of it lived on in oral tradition, passed from mother to daughter, neighbor to neighbor, village to village. It survived despite war, famine, plague, and persecution. Even when official medicine moved toward the formal practices of physicians, the kitchen garden remained a place of healing. Some of the remedies are still with us today. Chamomile tea, for sleep; peppermint, for digestion; lavender for calm; honey, for wounds. The wisdom of the garden endures because it speaks to something timeless, the connection between humans and the natural world. The gentle practice of caring for each other, with what the earth provides. Chapter 4. Remedies for fevers, coughs, and colds in Old Europe. The change of seasons often brought with it a change in health. As summer's warmth faded into the damp chill of autumn and winter, illness would settle into villages and towns like an unwelcome visitor. Without insulation or modern heating, homes were drafty, stone walls grew cold, and the air in small cottages became heavy with smoke from cooking fires. The combination of close quarters, poor ventilation, and the hardships of daily life made fevers, coughs, and colds an inevitable part of the yearly cycle. People didn't understand illness as we do today. They had no knowledge of germs or viruses, no microscopes to reveal the hidden world of pathogens. Instead, they turned to the teachings of Galen and Hippocrates, who taught that sickness was a matter of imbalanced humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If one humor overflowed or weakened, the body fell into sickness. Fevers were thought to be a sign of excessive heat and moisture. Coughs signaled a need to expel harmful humors from the chest. Colds reflected a chilling of the body's inner warmth. Medicine was not separate from daily life. It was woven into the home, the garden, and the kitchen hearth. When illness came, people responded with herbs, rituals, and remedies passed down. Through generations, understanding fevers were frightening in the past. A high fever could lead to delirium, where a person spoke to spirits no one else could see. Sometimes the patient would sweat profusely. Other times they would shiver uncontrollably, despite layers of woolen blankets. The goal of treatment was to cool the body and help it release whatever poison or imbalance had taken hold. Sweating was encouraged, but in a gentle, controlled way. Sudden chills and sweats were believed to be signs of the body trying to restore harmony. One of the most beloved fever remedies was elderflower tea. The elder tree held a sacred place in European folklore. People believed it to be a protector, a boundary between the worlds of the living and the spirits. Cutting down an elder tree without asking permission was thought to bring bad luck or invite illness. When used respectfully, the elder provided both food and medicine. The flowers of the elder, small and white with a delicate scent, were gathered in late spring and dried carefully in the shade. When someone developed a fever, these flowers were steeped in hot water to create a gentle tisane. Sipping elderflower tea encouraged mild sweating, helping the body to release the illness through the skin. The tea was sometimes flavored with honey or lemon balm, both for taste and for their own soothing properties. In more severe cases, healers might combine elderflower with yarrow and peppermint, creating a blend that worked together to lower fever, ease headaches, and settle the stomach. A warm cloth soaked in this tea might also be laid on the patient's forehead, offering relief from the heat of the fever. Remedies for cough-scoffs were a constant companion in medieval life. Smoke from open fires irritated the lungs. Dampness seeped into bones and chests. A simple cold could turn into something more dangerous if left untreated. People reached for horehound, a bitter herb with small, pale flowers and soft gray-green leaves. Horehound had been used since Roman times to treat coughs and bronchial troubles. It was gathered during the summer months, hung to dry in the rafters, and kept ready for winter ailments. To make horehound syrup, the leaves were boiled in water, then strained and mixed with honey. Honey was not just a sweetener, it was medicine in its own right, believed to carry the healing energy of bees and flowers. The resulting syrup was thick and soothing, coating the throat and easing persistent coughs. Some families kept a small, clay jar of horehound syrup on a shelf, using it as both remedy and preventative medicine. Another treasured remedy for sore throats and coughs was licorice root. Its sweetness made it especially popular with children. A small piece of dried licorice could be chewed slowly, softening in the mouth and releasing natural compounds that calmed irritation and eased breathing. Licorice was also added to teas alongside herbs like mallow or coltsfoot, both known for their mucilaginous properties, in other words, their ability to coat and soothe the throat, treating chest congestion when a cough sank deep into the chest, threatening to become bronchitis or pneumonia. Stronger measures were taken. Of the most common remedies was the mustard plaster. Mustard seeds were ground into a powder and mixed with flour and warm water to create a paste. This paste was spread onto cloth, often old linen, laid carefully over the patient's chest. The mustard generated gentle heat, drawing blood to the surface of the skin and helping to loosen stubborn phlegm. The goal was to stimulate circulation and open the airways, allowing the body to clear the congestion. Care had to be taken, though. If left on too long, the mustard could burn the skin. Healers watched closely, removing the plaster at the first sign of redness. Alongside mustard plasters, people used chest rubs made from goose fat or lard, combined with warming herbs like thyme, sage, and rosemary. The rub was massaged into the chest and back, usually before bed. While prayers or charms were whispered for healing and protection, garlic and onion, medicine of the poor for common folk. Remedies had to be accessible and affordable. Few plants were as universally available and as widely trusted as onions and garlic. Both were believed to cleanse the body and purify the air. Sliced onions might be placed in the room of a sick person, especially during outbreaks of disease. In the hope that they would absorb illness from the air, garlic was eaten raw, boiled in milk, or steeped in wine. It was said to warm the body, strengthen the immune system, and protect against bad airs thought to carry disease. Garlic was also pounded into poultices and applied to the feet or chest, though this treatment was pungent and sometimes uncomfortable, despite the sharp smell. People respected garlic's power. Today we know it contains allicin, a natural compound with antimicrobial properties. But in old Europe, it was simply trusted because it worked generation after generation. Saw its effects. Spiced wines and winter cordials for chills, fevers, and the general weakness that came with winter colds. Many households prepared spiced wines and cordials. A mixture of cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and nutmeg was simmered in wine or ale. Sometimes honey was added, both for sweetness and for its healing properties. These warming drinks were sipped slowly, especially at bedtime, to encourage the body to relax, sweat, recover. In wealthier homes, apothecaries prepared medicinal cordials, combining wine with herbs like angelica, hyssop, and anise. These tonics were kept in glass bottles and used with caution. Herbal medicine was powerful, and overdosing was a real danger. For the poor, however, a simple mulled wine served as both comfort and cure. Broths, soups, and simple nourishment. Someone was too weak to eat solid food. Broths and soups became essential medicine. A chicken broth, seasoned with parsley, sage, and thyme, was often given to the sick. The warmth of the broth nourished the body while being easy to digest. Herbs in the soup added medicinal value, stimulating appetite and aiding in recovery, even for those who could not afford meat. Barley gruel or vegetable pottage provided comfort. Onions, leeks, and garlic were added to boiling pots, filling the air with steam and offering a form of healing through warmth and hydration. These simple foods were part of the body's recovery process, restoring strength, calming the stomach, and bringing ease to the spirit. Spiritual care and healing rituals, physical remedies were only part of the healing process. In old Europe, illness was often seen as both physical and spiritual. People believed that fevers and coughs might be caused by miasma, the mysterious bad air that rose from swamps, dung heaps, or graveyards. But they also feared the influence of evil spirits, witchcraft, or the evil eye. Healing therefore involved prayers, charms, and protective acts. Before giving medicine, a wise woman might whisper a blessing over the herbs. Caregivers recited paternosters, Our Fathers, while applying mustard plasters or brewing elderflower tea. Small crosses were drawn in the air over a sick child, and holy water might be sprinkled around the bed to keep away harmful forces. Some healers tied red thread around the wrist or neck of the ill, believing red to be a color of protection. Others hung sprigs of rosemary or vervain in the sick room to ward off malevolent spirits. These rituals were not seen as separate from medicine. They were part of the healing itself, acknowledging that body, mind, and soul are deeply connected. The sounds of healing from fevers and colds, was not just about the herbs or broths. It was about the environment of care. Imagine the soft crackle of a fire, the murmur of prayers, the clink of wooden spoons stirring broth. The room smells of lavender, elderflower, and warm honey. Hands gently place cloths on fevered foreheads. Family members sit nearby, whispering quietly so as not to disturb the patient's rest. In monasteries, monks would chant psalms for the sick, the rhythm of their voices creating a kind of medicine and sound. In villages, neighbors visited the ailing with pots of soup, fresh herbs, or just kind words. Healing was communal. It was tender. It required patience and love. Closing thoughts: when we think of medicine today, we often imagine hospitals, pills, and sterile rooms. But in old Europe, healing was something that happened at home, in the kitchen, by the hearth, and in the garden. Chapter 5. Sleep, dreams, and nighttime remedies in the quiet hours of night. When the day's labor was done and the village lay still beneath the stars, sleep became the most important medicine of all. People in medieval and early modern Europe understood that rest was essential for healing not only of the body, but of the spirit. They did not speak of sleep in clinical terms as we might today, but in a language woven with poetry, mystery, and reverence. Sleep was seen as a gift from God or the natural world, a time when the soul could wander freely, visit distant realms in dreams, and return refreshed to the waking world. Yet for many, sleep did not always come easily. Life was hard, and the mind often remained restless after the chores of the day were finished. There were worries about crops, illness, hunger, or loss. Nighttime was also a vulnerable time, a moment when spirits, both literal and figurative, might trouble the mind. Without electric lights, darkness itself carried weight. The flicker of a single candle or the red glow of embers in the hearth offered the only comfort against the long hours until dawn, so people turned to herbs, rituals, and remedies to find rest. Herbal aids for sleep, the most familiar and beloved sleep aid in old Europe, was chamomile. Its delicate white petals with yellow centers mirrored the sun and moon together, making it a symbol of both calm and balance. Chamomile grew easily in cottage gardens, spreading softly among the other herbs. It was gathered at midday, when the flowers held the most scent, then dried carefully and stored for the year ahead. A cup of chamomile tea at bedtime was more than just a drink. It was a ritual. The gentle aroma, sweet and apple-like, invited the body to soften and the mind to ease its grip on the day's concerns. Some added honey, not just for taste, but for its symbolic sweetness, a reminder that life, though hard, also held gentle moments of care. For those whose minds remained particularly anxious, stronger remedies were called for. Valerian root was one of the most potent sleep herbs known to medieval healers. It was gathered in the spring or autumn, when the plant's energy was concentrated in its roots. Valerian's scent was strong, even unpleasant to some, like old socks or damp earth, but it was trusted. Valerian was usually prepared as a tincture steeped in wine or vinegar. Just a few drops would be added to water at night to quiet trembling nerves or a racing heart. In some regions, people also used passion flower, lemon balm, and catnip, all gentle herbs known to soothe the nervous system. These plants were often combined in teas or infused into oils for massage. A cloth soaked in warm herbal water might be laid across the forehead. It's a soft weight calming both body and spirit. The hop pillow tradition, perhaps one of the most enchanting sleep remedies, was the hop pillow. Hops, known today for flavoring beer, were also recognized for their sedative properties. The green, cone-shaped flowers were gathered in late summer, dried carefully in the shade to preserve their oils, and then sewn into small cloth pillows. These pillows were tucked beneath the head at night, releasing a gentle, earthy aroma thought to lull the mind into sleep. Hop pillows were a common sight in homes across Europe, especially among those who brewed their own ale and had easy access to the plant. Some wise women also mixed hops with lavender, rosemary, or sweet woodruff, creating a blend of scents designed to calm anxiety and protect against restless thoughts. In monasteries, monks sometimes filled their bedding with herbs, believing that sleep was a sacred act that required preparation of both the body and the soul. The herbal pillow was both medicine and prayer. Nightmares, charms, and spiritual protection. Sleep was not just about rest. It was also about dreams. And in medieval thought, dreams were important. Dreams could be messages from the divine, warnings of illness, or glimpses into otherworldly realms. But not all dreams were welcome. Nightmares were feared as signs of imbalance, spiritual attack, or the work of restless souls. People spoke of the night hag, or mare, a spirit said to sit on the chest during sleep, causing feelings of suffocation or terror. Today we might call this sleep paralysis, but in the past, it was understood as an encounter with something unseen, to guard against such terrors. Protective rituals were performed at bedtime. Bundles of herbs like St. John's wort, lavender, rosemary, and mugwort were tied with red thread and hung near the bed. Red was thought to repel evil, and these herbs were believed to protect the sleeper from spiritual harm. Some placed a small sachet of these herbs under the pillow, murmuring a charm or prayer as they did so. St. John before St. Mary beside, keep me safe this night from ill-tide. Children were especially protected. Parents might trace a cross on their child's forehead before sleep, or tuck a charm beneath the cradle to keep away bad dreams. In some places, iron scissors or a small knife were placed beneath the bed or pillow not to harm anyone, but as a ward against spirits. Iron was believed to have protective powers, able to repel fairies, witches, or other night visitors. The healing of the night itself was seen as a healing force, if approached with care. Villagers often spoke of the two sleeps. Before the Industrial Revolution, many people naturally woke for an hour or two in the middle of the night, a time for prayer, quiet conversation, or tending the fire. This break between first sleep and second sleep was accepted as normal, even beneficial. It allowed for reflection, meditation, and soft communion with the world. If someone woke during this time feeling anxious, a caregiver might prepare warm milk infused with nutmeg. Nutmeg was considered a powerful but gentle sedative, bringing the mind back into calmness. Some healers added a pinch of cinnamon or cloves, not just for flavor, but for warmth, comfort, and spiritual protection. Others whispered psalms or blessings, trusting in the rhythm of breath and prayer to guide them back to rest. The sounds and textures of sleep in old Europe was not silent, but full of natural sounds. The crackle of the fire, the creak of wood settling, the distant hoot of an owl, these were part of the night's music. Bedding was simple. Straw mattresses softened with wool blankets or linen sheets. In cold months, families often slept together in shared rooms, bodies close for warmth. The rhythm of communal life continued even into sleep. For those tending the sick, night was also a time of watchfulness. Caregivers would sit by the bedside, rubbing sore muscles with herbal oils, or massaging the feet with mint or marjoram to bring relaxation. A hand laid gently on the forehead was part of the remedy, an act of both love and healing. Dreams as medicine dreams were not merely random images, they were seen as medicine for the soul. If someone dreamed of clear water or green fields, it was thought to be a sign of health and balance. Dreams of storms or fires, on the other hand, might signal internal unrest. Wise women sometimes acted as dream interpreters, helping villagers understand the meaning of their nighttime visions. People kept dream diaries, either in their minds or in simple notebooks if they could write. Some sought out specific herbs to influence dreams. Mugwort, for instance, was known as the dream herb. Placed under the pillow, it was believed to invite prophetic visions or help solve problems carried into sleep. The end of the night, as dawn approached, the remedies of the night gave way to the work of the new day. The last embers of the fire would be stirred. Herbs gathered from the day before prepared for use once more. Sleep was not seen as wasted time. It was part of the healing cycle, as important as food, drink, and prayer. Chapter 6. Caring for the skin and body in the daily life of old Europe. Caring for the skin and body was not a matter of vanity, was a necessity. Born from the simple practical reality of survival life in the medieval and early modern world, was physically demanding. People walked long distances over rough, uneven ground. They labored in fields beneath harsh sun or icy winds. They carried water, chopped wood, scrubbed laundry by hand, and tended fires from dawn until dusk. Hands cracked and bled from cold, their feet blistered from endless walking. Skin was exposed to soot from hearths, mud from roads, and the bite of insects. Medical care, when it was available, focused not only on curing illness but also on protecting the body from harm, soothing daily aches, and preserving health through simple, time-honored rituals of care. Let us now step quietly into this world of herbal salves, healing waters, and skin-nurturing traditions, rituals that were woven into the fabric of ordinary life. Cleansing and healing wounds. When someone suffered a cut, scrape, or wound, the first step was always to clean the injury. This might seem obvious today, But in the past, the idea of keeping wounds free of infection was not fully understood in the scientific sense. Still, through observation and experience, healers learned that washing a wound led to better outcomes than leaving it untreated. Marigold petals, also known as calendula, were a favorite plant for this purpose, bright orange and yellow. Flowers were seen as symbolic of the sun, radiant, life-giving, and protective. The petals were soaked in warm water to create a gentle infusion, which was used to cleanse wounds. Marigold was believed to reduce inflammation, prevent infection, promote the knitting of the skin. Other plants were also used to wash wounds. Rosewater, distilled from fresh petals, was especially valued for its cooling, soothing effect. On burns and rashes, the scent of rose was thought to lift the spirit while easing physical pain. In monasteries, rosewater was prepared carefully, stored in small glass vials, and kept in the infirmary for treating the sick. Once a wound was cleaned, honey was often applied. Honey was more than just food. It was medicine. Its sticky surface protected wounds from dirt, and its natural antimicrobial properties slowed the growth of harmful bacteria. Many households kept honey on hand not only for sweetening meals but for healing the body. Bees were seen as sacred creatures, and honey was considered a gift from the divine, for deeper wounds or abscesses. Healers sometimes used poultices of mashed herbs and lard, wrapped in cloth and laid over the skin. Plantain leaves, dock leaves, and comfrey roots were common choices. These poultices helped draw out infection, reduce swelling, and soften hardened skin. Soothing burns in skin. Irritations burns were a regular hazard in medieval homes. The hearth was the center of life used for cooking, heating, and light, but it was also dangerous. Sparks flew, pots spilled, and hands reached too close to flames to treat minor burns. Healers turned to rosewater mixed with beeswax. This soft balm cooled the burn and protected the damaged skin from the dust and soot of daily life. In some regions, aloe vera, known as the healing plant, was grown on windowsills and used for burns. The cool gel inside its thick leaves brought immediate relief when applied to scorched skin, for rashes, eczema, and dry skin. Ointments were made by melting animal fat, softened goose fat or lard, blending them with healing herbs. Plantain, calendula, and mallow were common additions. As their leaves and flowers calmed the skin and reduced redness, these ointments were kept in small clay pots, ready to be used at night when families gathered around the fire. Massaging salves into cracked hands or sore feet became a daily ritual, quiet time of rest and connection after the day's hard work. Bathing is medicine contrary to modern myth. Medieval people did bathe, though not always daily or in the ways we think of today. Bathing was often medicinal, a therapeutic act, rather than a routine of hygiene alone. When the body ached or the skin became inflamed, people prepared herbal baths. Heated water was poured into wooden tubs or barrels, and herbs were steeped in the bath to create healing waters. A bath of oat straw, for example, softened the skin and relieved itchiness. The milky water, rich in natural compounds from the oats, eased conditions like eczema and dry skin. Sometimes lavender, chamomile, or sage were added to relax tense muscles and calm the mind. For those suffering from fevers or chills, a tepid bath infused with willow bark, meadowsweet, or elderflowers was used. These plants were thought to bring down body temperature gently. While their pleasant scents lifted the spirit in monasteries, baths were part of medical care. Monks prepared balnea medicinalia, healing baths prescribed for specific ailments. They documented recipes in their herbals, carefully noting the correct proportions of herbs, the temperature of the water, and the times for bathing according to the lunar calendar. Joint care and muscle aches, hard labor was part of daily life. For nearly everyone, from farmers to craftspeople, backs bent in the fields, shoulders strained at the loom, and hands worked until stiff and swollen to ease joint pain and sore muscles. People turned to nettles, mustard compresses, and herbal rubs, although nettles sting when fresh, healers found that boiled nettles when applied as a warm compress could stimulate blood flow and relieve joint pain. The warmth brought comfort, While the plant's properties reduced inflammation, another common remedy was the mustard plaster, made from ground mustard seeds mixed with warm water and flour. The plaster was placed on the chest to clear the lungs or on aching joints to stimulate circulation. Care was needed, as mustard could irritate the skin if left on too long. The healer would watch closely, removing the plaster when the skin began. To redden, massage oils were prepared from rosemary, marjoram, and chamomile, infused into olive oil or animal fats. At the end of a long day, these oils were rubbed into sore legs and tired backs, the scent of the herbs offering both physical and emotional relief. Skin care as protection in old Europe. Caring for the skin was not just about treating ailments, it was about protection. The skin was seen as the body's first defense against the elements. If it cracked or broke, illness could enter. Keeping the skin soft and intact was vital. During the summer months, herbs like sage, lavender, and wormwood were rubbed onto the arms and legs to repel insects. Fleas, lice, and mosquitoes were constant companions. And while complete prevention was impossible, these herbs helped reduce bites. People also prepared salves for the feet, knowing that the feet carried them through every task. After a long day, villagers would wash their feet in warm water with mint or marjoram, then rub in oils or fats to soften the skin and prevent cracking. In colder months, lips and hands were protected with beeswax balms, sometimes scented with rose or violet. For additional soothing, caring for hair and scalp hair care was part of body care too. People washed their hair with herbal rinses using plants like rosemary, nettle, and chamomile. Nettle rinses were believed to strengthen the hair and prevent hair loss. Chamomile lightened blonde hair, giving it a golden hue, while sage darkened, graying hair and added shine. Scalp treatments were prepared from apple cider vinegar, often steeped with rosemary or thyme to cleanse the scalp and prevent lice. Combs carved from wood or bone were used daily, both to untangle hair and to check for pests. Hair was usually worn covered or braided, both to keep it clean and to protect it from the harsh elements. The monastic influence recorded knowledge. Much of what we know today about medieval skin and body care comes from monastic records. Monks and nuns were among the first to write down detailed recipes for ointments, salves, and healing waters. In monastic gardens, physic gardens, rows of medicinal plants were cultivated with care. They prepared balms for the poor, tended the sick in their infirmaries, and copied ancient medical texts from the Greeks, Romans, and Arab scholars. Texts, like the leech books of Bald and the Herbarium Apulae, contained lists of treatments for everything from boils to bruises, fevers to frostbite. These texts combine practical remedies with prayers and charms, acknowledging the spiritual aspect of healing. The monks' careful records preserved knowledge that otherwise might have been lost, keeping alive the traditions of plant medicine. Through times of war, famine, and plague, the role of the family, while monasteries had their herb gardens and hospitals. Most healing happened at home. It was common for each family to have their own book of remedies, handwritten in simple language, filled with recipes passed from mother to daughter, father to son. These books might include notes like, 4 cracked, hands melt lard with marigold, apply at night while praying the Ave Maria, 4 bites of insects, rub with sage leaf, and lavender in the house to keep flies away, or tired feet, soak in warm ale with mint, rest before the fire. Healing was a family affair. Everyone learned something about herbs and treatments, from the youngest child to the village elders. Healing as a daily act, caring for the skin and body, was not an event reserved for times of sickness. It was part of daily life. It meant watching the sky for the right time to harvest herbs. It meant kneading ointments at the hearth, boiling herbs into healing teas, and preparing balms by candlelight. As we come to the close of this chapter, indeed, this part of our journey, let us take a moment to sit quietly with the knowledge we've gathered. Caring for the skin and body in old Europe was not merely about treating wounds or softening the skin. It was an act of protection, connection, and love. In a world where life was physically demanding, where hardship pressed upon the body from dawn until nightfall. People learned to listen closely to their own needs and to the needs of others. There were no supermarkets lined with bottles of lotions and creams, no pharmacies with antiseptic ointments or synthetic balms. There was the earth, the seasons, and the wisdom of those who came before. Through small, daily rituals, the people of the past tended to their bodies as part of the natural cycle of life. They rubbed salves into cracked skin, not only to prevent infection, but to preserve the body's integrity, knowing that an untended wound could invite illness. But also knowing that the act of care itself was healing, soothed more than just the skin. It soothed the soul. They massaged oils into sore muscles. Not because it was luxurious, but because it was necessary for survival. Without strong limbs and flexible joints, the labor of life could not continue. Yet in these acts of care, there was tenderness, a reminder that even in hard times, there was room for gentleness. The body was seen not as something separate from nature, but as part of the same living world. When you applied mint to your feet, you were working with the earth's gifts. When you rubbed rosemary into your temples, you were inviting the forest into your home. Every herb carried memory, symbolism, and meaning. Plants were friends, protectors, and healers. They were known not just by their uses, but by their character, their scents, their times of bloom, their preferred places in the garden. There was a spiritual dimension to this care, too. People believed that healing could not happen without the support of unseen forces, saints, angels, the spirits of plants, or the blessings of the Virgin Mary. A balm was prepared with prayer as much as with wax and oil. A bath was drawn with herbs, but also with intention, perhaps under a full moon, or while reciting quiet invocations for peace and health. In this way, healing was not mechanical, it was relational. It involved patience, observation, and respect for the body as something sacred. The healer, whether a wise woman, monk, mother, or elder, worked not only with hands, but with heart, a medicine of rhythm and ritual. Consider. For a moment, the rhythms of old European life, the work of healing was not rushed. Herbs were gathered at the right time of day, often at dawn, when plants were thought to carry the freshest energy. Roots were dug when the moon was waning. Leaves were picked before noon. Flowers gathered before the dew had fully dried. There was a sense of right timing, of aligning human action with the larger rhythms of the earth and sky. Ointments were prepared by the hearth, stirred slowly with wooden spoons. The beeswax was melted patiently, the herbs steeped gently. Salves were poured into ceramic pots, sometimes inscribed with a cross or a simple mark of blessing. Each step was done with care, not haste. These were not chores. They were rituals of connection to nature, to community, to the mysteries of life itself. The power of small acts today, in a world filled with speed and technology, it can be easy to forget the power of small, repeated acts of care. But in the quiet spaces of history, we find reminders. A mother massaging her child's cold feet with mint oil. A healer wrapping a bandage soaked in marigold tea around a neighbor's arm. A grandfather soaking his aching joints in a warm bath of nettle and sage while the wind howls outside. These acts may seem simple, but they are the foundation of healing. They build trust, create comfort, and restore the body to balance in ways that modern medicine sometimes overlooks. Healing was not about instant cures or dramatic interventions. It was about tending to the body day by day, helping it recover from the strains of life with patience and kindness. It was about knowing when to rest, when to nourish, when to protect, and when to ease. A legacy of care. Much of this knowledge has survived because it was embedded in daily life. It was not locked away in books, but lived out in gardens, kitchens, and quiet conversations between generations. It was woven into lullabies, prayers, recipes, and seasonal traditions. Even today, echoes of this wisdom remain. We sip chamomile tea for rest. We apply honey to wounds. We rub lavender oil onto sore muscles. We may do these things without thinking of their origins, but they connect us to a lineage of human care that stretches back through centuries. This is the legacy of old. Europe's healers not grand medical discoveries, but a culture of daily attentiveness, a medicine of home, of family, of village life. Returning to the hearth, as we reflect on these gentle remedies, let us imagine the hearthside scene once more. The fire burns low in the grate. Outside, the night wind moves softly through the trees. Inside, someone is stirring a pot of salve, the scent of rosemary and beeswax rising in the warm air. A bowl of marigold tea cools on the table. A child sleeps nearby, wrapped in blankets, breathing peacefully. These are acts of healing without urgency, rooted in care, repetition, and love. They remind us that tending the body is not separate from tending the spirit. When we protect our skin, ease our joints, or soothe a wound, we are not just keeping illness at bay, we are affirming life, connection, and trust in the rhythms of the world, an invitation as you return to your own life. Perhaps you will carry a piece of this wisdom with you. Perhaps you will notice the way your hands ache after a long day and choose to rub them gently with oil. Not as a luxury, but as a way to honor your body's work. Perhaps you will prepare a cup of herbal tea for someone you love. Understanding that this small act is part of a long tradition of care. Perhaps you will pause in a garden, noticing the plants not only for their beauty, but for their healing potential, their resilience, their stories. Healing is not always found in distant hospitals or grand treatments. Often, it is found in the slow, quiet moments of daily life, in the simple act of looking after ourselves and each other with kindness. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the everyday remedies of old Europe. May you sleep well, rise refreshed, and walk gently through your days, remembering that healing is not just something we receive, but something we offer, quietly, through the rhythm of care. Good night.